You've carefully crafted an audio system to your exact preferences. It's sounding wonderful and you don't want to make any big changes. But maybe you're looking for that little bit of je ne sais quoi, that last sprinkling of seasoning to take the good to the sublime. I might have exactly the seasoning you're looking for, and there's a nice little surprise along the way. One of my favourite USB cables for price and performance is the Supra Excalibur USB. Those come in at a little bit under €120 for a 1 metre cable. And yes, the pricing here is all going to be in euros because that's where the cables are from, but I will be providing estimates in US dollars and Australian dollars. Just keep in mind they're estimates only. Listening to the crisp, clean and dynamic recording that is Cannonball by Supertramp, the Supra Excalibur cable just amps up the sense of clarity and energy slightly. It helps the system of the LAIV or Live, Harmony DAC and HP2A headphone amp and preamp to have a great sense of separation and clarity within its sound. But it doesn't really help with any sense of depth and layering in the soundstage, with instead everything being quite left-right separated. And by the way, everything I'm saying here is true on both speakers and headphones. I just happened to start my testing with headphones. At this point though, I probably should actually introduce you to the subject of this video, at least one of them. This is the Ricable Invictus USB cable. It costs €378 for a 1 metre cable, and it's the most expensive cable in this video. There are cheaper ones coming, and you should definitely stick around for those. The Invictus cable boasts a design that's focused on the physical characteristics of the cable. Things like matching the correct impedance for USB transmission, as well as lowering capacitance and resistance. That last one was a bit odd though, because I always thought that resistance and impedance were the same thing, so I don't know if maybe they meant inductance instead. Generally, the design of any conductor is balancing those three characteristics: resistance, capacitance, and inductance. I'm sure that's not all there is to building a cable, but those are the building blocks. Anyway, there seems to be a lot of care and attention put into the design of the Invictus cable, and mostly the results are good. One area that's not so good is that the combination of insulation and cable structure itself means that the Invictus USB cable does not like to turn corners. In many systems, that won't be an issue, but in some systems, like the one that I was using for testing, it can be a real hassle. My problem was that the Volumio Revo Plus streamer that I was using, and the review for that one's coming if you want to subscribe, that has a normally placed USB-A socket. In other words, it's installed in the back of the device in what I always think of as the right way up. Whereas the Live Harmony DAC has all of its connectors in what I think of as being upside down. Having to twist the Invictus cable to come out of the Revo Plus and down, upside down, into the Live Harmony DAC was a real challenge, but I got there. And when I did get there, I heard a system that was quite intimate sounding, not unlike the Excalibur cable. What was different though was that that same system now had an increased sense of clarity and articulation. The separation of sounds and the focus of the image were also fantastic. Generally, that speaks to a very clean setup where the noise is reduced to the point that our brain is able to extract extra fine detail information and also better timing accuracy. I've got a video coming up that will explain all of the science behind that last statement, so again, subscribe if you're interested. In short though, the Invictus cable was an excellent upgrade from the Excalibur cable, and returning to the Excalibur cable showed me that it was actually a more fatiguing and less refined sound. At less than 1/3 of the price of the Invictus cable, that's not a knock. The Excalibur cable shouldn't be as good as the Invictus cable unless Invictus are charging way more than they should be. And this is also where it comes back to the question of your budget and how far you're trying to push your system via the use of different interconnects. If I did have one knock against the Invictus cable, it's that it doesn't seem to do anything to improve the sense of size and scale on the soundstage. Separation, image focus, those are all fantastic, but maximum soundstage size isn't something it seems to bring. A brief comparison to the similarly priced Curious Evolved USB cable revealed a different sound that's smoother and more spacious from the Curious cable, but it did come at the cost of a slight loss in detail and clarity. And that raises a key point here. We, the general public, have no way of knowing what is correct when it comes to audio. Even then, who would define what correct should be? Because how a track is mixed and mastered is entirely subjective. From the moment somebody first moves a slider on a mixing desk or in a virtual console, that's a subjective decision. So who says what's right and wrong? That's impossible to know. So there is absolutely no way to know what's right and wrong, and this comes down more to what your priorities are. What that means is your choice of interconnects, be they digital or analog, can be and should be just as personal as your choice of other components, including things like speakers. And to help with that, let me share with you another Ricable, but this time we're going down in price. The Dedalus or Dedalus cable is €245 for a 1 meter cable. According to the Ricable website, it was developed at the same time as the Invictus cable and therefore shares many of the same technologies. However, listening to it on my setup revealed some sonic differences between how these cables influence the system. Like the Invictus cable, the Dedalus cable, and apparently that is the correct pronunciation, the Dedalus cable is a more intimate sounding cable, much like the Invictus. And in fact, I felt like it was a bit more intimate than the Invictus cable. Detail and clarity are also headed in the same direction as the Invictus, but it doesn't quite reach the same heights as the Invictus does. As a result, the Dedalus cable sounds a little bit less open, there's a bit less sense of separation and space between sounds, even though the overall soundstage size and depth is much the same. It's a little bit more intimate, but the problem is more in the fact, not the problem, but the difference is more in the fact that there's a little bit less sense of separation and focus for individual sounds. So essentially, you're getting the sound of the Invictus just scaled down a bit, and you're spending a bit less for it. I should be clear here too, the separation of sounds with the Dedalus cable is still excellent. It's not like the sounds are suddenly blurring together, but the overall sense is that it's a little bit less spacious than the Invictus, and everything feels just a little bit closer to me as the listener, and that's whether it's on headphones or speakers. And as you can probably already gather, after spending more time with the Dedalus cable, I don't know that I would recommend it to anybody. It's not bad, but I don't know that it's clearly better than the Supra Excalibur cable we began with. It's a little more refined than the Excalibur, but I prefer the spatial characteristics of the Excalibur, and that would win for me. However, do you remember that I teased at the beginning of the video that there'd be a nice little surprise later? Here it is. This is the Ricable's Magnus cable. At €114 for a 1 meter cable, it's down to pocket change between this and the Excalibur. When you plug both in though, you get quite a different experience. The Magnus takes the sound towards a richer mid-range feel, and just more sense of weight in the sound overall. The sound is wonderfully clean, but not at all forceful. Where the Excalibur is dynamic and crisp, the Magnus is smooth and refined. But there's no lack of technical prowess from either setup considering their prices. I also felt like the Magnus presented the most sense of soundstage space, or overall size, of all the cables I've talked about here except the Curious Evolve cable. That doesn't make the Magnus technically better than the Dedalus or the Invictus, but I find it preferable to the Dedalus, and at half the price, that's always a nice place to find better sound. And so let me summarise this journey for you. If you're looking to tweak your system with an upgraded USB cable, there are some fantastic options here. The Excalibur used to be my go-to recommendation for an affordable premium USB cable, but not anymore. The Excalibur is still great if you specifically want a crisp and dynamic presentation, but I would choose the Ricable Magnus cable because I like its refined but still detailed and technically proficient sound. Above that, as I've already said, I don't think I'd recommend the Dedalus cable because I think the Magnus cable is subjectively preferable. Instead, I would just save up a little bit longer and go straight for the Invictus cable if you're looking for a more technically focused sound. The sense of clarity and image focus from the Invictus is quite addictive. It's a crisper, cleaner, and more energetic sound, a bit like the Excalibur cable, but it delivers it with a greater sense of refinement. Of course, if you're looking for something a bit smoother, there's still the Curious Evolved USB cable, and also the Tubulus Consensus USB cable. I've got separate reviews of both of those, so you can search here on the channel if you're interested. Or if I had you at addictive clarity and image focus, you might want to watch this video up here next, where I reviewed the AA Audio SIG USB cable, including comparisons with the Invictus here. Both cables deliver outstanding focus and clarity, but with a few differences, so check out that video if you want to know more. For now, I want to say a huge thanks to BMC Audio Visual for lending me the Ricables. Thank you also to all of you YouTube channel members, thank you to channel Patreon members, and thank you to those of you that leave super thanks on videos like this one. Until next time, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here again soon on Passion for Sound.